I think I'll use the microphone. Is it working? It is. Okay, and so please tell me if I'm either too loud or too quiet. It's hard to know how to judge my voice in a big room like this. So Craig didn't mention that he used to be a student of mine years and years ago in my old life where I didn't do cycling research, but I did occupational health research, and that's Craig's role in life is occupational health. So anyway, so it's a treat to be able to see him, and it's a treat to see how many of you came out. Some faces that are familiar and lots who I don't know. I'm always impressed when I come back to this side of town. I used to live just a couple of blocks from here. But every time I come back, I think, oh my God, it's such a community here, and the streets are full of people, and it's wonderful. So for those of you who live over here, you're very lucky. So Sarah asked me to talk about cycling, which is my research area, has been for about 10 years now. And I know that the whole issue for you is deciding about whether or not to make Commercial Drive a complete street. And I particularly want to talk about how cycling fits in that idea of a complete street. And because my field is public health, of course I will give you that perspective. So, am I standing in front of a screen for a lot of you? Are you okay? Okay. So clearly our emphasis on driving, and speaking as someone who just drove over here in the rain, I'm guilty as many. Our emphasis on driving, there's no question that it's had a multifaceted influence on public health. And at the top of this slide, you can see the emissions from vehicles, both air pollution emissions and noise emissions are two components of it. Then there's the congestion itself, which forces on us sitting in our cars, sitting in traffic. And those things have all the influences that you see at the bottom of this slide. Certainly global climate change, which has all sorts of weather events, have catastrophic impacts on health from cold and heat and extreme forces like winds and so on. Heart disease, lung disease, certain cancers, especially colon cancer, also breast cancer, and diabetes. Diabetes associated with both heart disease and kidney disease and dementia. So all of those sort of chronic diseases of modern life associated with driving. One of the things that has been shown repeatedly, that physical activity greatly reduces all the chronic diseases of modern life. But how to get that physical activity into your daily life is a problem for many, many people. And traveling, going on your daily business, whatever it is, as many times as it's logical and possible, on foot or by bike, makes a huge difference. It's a lot easier to maintain. And people who have studied how people maintain physical activity repeatedly show that if you get your physical activity through travel, it's way easier to maintain than by going to gyms and things like that. This is a picture of from Google Maps in Holland, of course. And bicycling, between walking and bicycling presents a special opportunity. So what this graph shows is the proportion of trips made by walking or cycling in different countries. And what you can see is Canada and the US on the left side, and then a group of Northern European countries. I feel like I'm in the way, but anyway, maybe if I move around. A group of Northern European countries on, yeah, that's a good idea, thank you. On the right side. And what you can see is that for walking in purple, Canada and the US are at about 10%, and these other countries are around 20%. So they have about double the amount of walking trips, or proportion of trips that we do. But if you look at cycling, we're at about 1% of trips on a national basis. In British Columbia, we're at about 2% of trips, same as Metro Vancouver. Vancouver proper, we're at about 4% of trips. But look at these other countries. They're between 10 and 25% of trips on a national basis. Many of them are at 25 to 60% of trips on a city basis. So that the room for growth by bicycling is way more than the room for growth by walking, even though we have a great room for growth by either mechanism. So why ride a bike? I really love these two pictures. This is one of my colleagues' kids just learning to ride this summer, and joy. And you know, when I go down the street and I look at people in their various modes of travel, in cars or on bikes or walking or running, I always think that the people who look the happiest are cycling. And I've often thought, well, I wonder why that is. It's like you're outside, which is great, which you are for when you're walking or running, but it's easier, right? You get to go fast with a lot less effort. So I think that just brings the joy of cycling. Freedom is another huge thing. And of course, as a kid, many, many people will say that when they first learned to ride a bike, that gave them freedom. Suddenly, they were able to go that extra distance that they couldn't go when they were just walking. And now they could, you know, go to a neighborhood shop, pick up some candy or potato chips or whatever, go visit their friends. And of course, that's true throughout your life. It gives you that extra mid-distance travel that you might not otherwise get. I really love this article that was in the Courier just a week or so ago by a fellow named Eric Mould, who's an 85-year-old in Vancouver. And he talked about why he rides a bike, and he actually rides an e-bike. So he said, I'm a senior citizen. The e-bike has turned out to be a blessing by offering freedom. So once again, freedom from my mobility issues. He has hip problems. So he said, what's more is you feel good, you're getting a bit of exercise, and you're leaving space for those who must drive or take transit. I thought it was so wonderful. It was both happiness for himself and a generous spirit. It was really lovely. So then, I hate to put this horrible picture here, but then the question is, well, if cycling is so wonderful, why not? And the biggest reason is safety. We've done a study of 1,400, an opinion survey of 1,400 people randomly selected in Metro Vancouver, and we asked them about 73 factors that might either motivate them to cycle or deter them from cycling, and safety concerns came out in the top. And this is not true just here. This is true throughout North America, in Australia, New Zealand, England, all those places. The English-speaking world is very similar on cycling. And the safety concerns, snow and ice. I don't know if any of you have noticed that there's a great new book out by a Calgary journalist called Tom Babin called Frostbite. Anyway, it's changing thinking in those snowy places about snow and ice riding. But the main safety concerns that come up again and again are car, bus, and truck traffic, traffic going at 50 kilometers an hour or more, and the potential for an injury in a collision with a car or another motor vehicle. Those are the top concerns. So, of course, another thing we've studied in different ways is this question, is cycling unsafe? And there is a multiple answer, really. On the one hand, in my research, I found that cycling is similar in risk to walking. And I think a lot of people think walking is pretty safe. On the other hand, if we compare the dangers of walking and cycling here, and driving, same thing, to these northern European countries that I just mentioned, all of our traffic risks are much higher here than in those other countries. We don't take care of traffic in the way they do. They have Vision Zero. They're doing way better on every mode of transportation. But another way to look at safety from the point of view of cycling is to compare risks and benefits. And I mentioned before that cycling is great, walking too, to get physical activity and reduce the risk of those horrible chronic diseases of our time. And what you can see here is that the benefits of cycling hugely outweigh the risk of injury. So for every one life potentially lost from an injury crash, a whole bunch of studies have been done, and they estimate sort of between 10 and 100 lives saved from reducing those chronic diseases. So it's a huge benefit to risk ratio.